verse 31 through 46. How to make a choice. Verse 34 of chapter 25, Matthew chapter 25, just to give you some background in particular of this text. This text tells us what will happen on that great day when we shall be called to meet the Lord. You know, people talk all kinds of things, and there are a lot of things that people say about going to see God. Sister Montasia, a lot of times there are things that people say that are not true. They're not based on the Bible. There's some people that tell you all kinds of things in terms of this will get you into heaven and this will keep you out of heaven. Chapter 25 is one of the only places in the text that we find the specific language that Jesus gives with regards to how the separating will be done. If you've ever been here on a Sunday and you've been favored to hear Deacon Johnson sing the song, I'm going to be at the meeting, one of the things that he says in that song is that I'm going to be at the meeting and there's going to be a great separation around the throne. If you're wondering about the separation and how we will be sorted, then you need to look at chapter 25. You know, sorting is important. You don't want to get your whites mixed up with your colors. You want to make sure that you don't bleach the wrong things. Sorting is important. You want to make sure that you know the category of things. You want to know the difference between poisonous mushrooms and ones that you can digest. You've got to realize that sometimes sorting is important. And for us to really understand what will happen when we get there, then we need to know chapter 25. Because I would think that most of us would like to go be with the Lord and not to a place of eternal damnation. I think I'm right about that. Yeah. Talk to me. Am I right about that? Yeah. So chapter 25 is that place. Now let me put out the controversial stuff, the stuff that folks won't like, Brother Smith. See, there's been times when I grew up in the church, along with some of you, and as we grew up in the church, we were told that if you smoked cigarettes, you were going to hell. They told us. They said if you drank liquor, you were going to hell. You're going to hell if you drank liquor. And they had a whole long list of things that would send you to hell. Unfortunately, most of the things that I heard as a child growing up that people said Jesus said, he did not say. As a matter of fact, I don't ever remember while growing up these things that he's going to talk about in chapter 25. I don't remember hearing these things. And so one of the reasons that I felt it necessary that we start the year by talking about these things is because they're important. These are the things that Jesus says. Not Troy Shaw, not Donna Haynes, not Kathy Palmer. These are the things that God says. Now, there's some things as a Christian, as a person, that I don't like and I would love to say that God said don't do that. But if I told you that, I'd be lying. If anybody else tells you that, you tell them, say, you need to look at chapter 25 and find out which category you're in. We need to make some choices, and the first choice that we must make, and that's not in your notes, this isn't point one, but the first choice that we must make, Sister Magwood, is we must make a commitment to trust the Bible. We must make a commitment to trust the Bible. We're in a church that lives the Bible together through education, missions, and ministry, and we must believe that the Bible is true. And we must trust it no matter what we've been told in the past. All of the stuff you heard, the stuff that Grandma told you, if it's not in the Bible, then we can't use it for our edification. We need the Bible. Now, so here's what Jesus says. We must make a choice. And look at 34. In verse 34 it says, then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. And so we must realize that we need to act like our future depends on us making a choice. Our future depends on us making a choice. He says the kingdom is prepared for you from the very beginning, and he's calling you. Sister Morel, I want to be there, and I want to be on the right side of God. I want to be there when he calls. I believe that many of you want to be there when he calls. I believe that that's what you want to do. I believe that when God calls, you want to be there. I really believe that. The issue, though, is that far too often, we don't know what it takes to make that right choice. Because we're not paying attention, and we're not really studying the word like we should. It's a very easy thing to come into a church and to go through the motion. Sing a couple of songs, preacher prays a couple of prayers, we feel great, we go home. We did our duty. It's another thing to have a life-changing experience. A life-changing experience. This relationship with God, my friends, is not a diet. It is a lifestyle. You hear people say that? They're going on a diet. And you know what happens when you go on a diet, right? You go on a diet. You say, well, I'm going to give up this, and I'm going to give up that, and I'm not going to eat this, and I'm not going to eat that. And as we do that, what happens is we find out in time that we can't keep it up. Test it. It's green. Check 2, 3. It's on there. Thank you. We find out in time that we can't keep it up because we've decided to give up a few things temporarily because we wanted to lose a few pounds. But as you know, the doctor will tell you the best way is to choose a lifestyle. And when you choose a healthy lifestyle, then it becomes about more than just losing a few pounds. It becomes, I want to be healthy. And so what happens is sometimes in church, we decide that, you know, what I want to do is I want to look good for a moment. I've seen people do it when they're talking about getting married. I've seen people do it when, you know, after mama dies. I've seen people do it, you know, after they lose a job or something like that. They go on a spiritual diet. They connect with God for a short time, and then as soon as things are going right for them again, it's over. We've got to make a choice that our relationship with God is serious and real, and that we are going to be connected with God. This is the first Sunday of the year. It is time for us to make a commitment and to make some changes in our lives to say that this is going to be real for me. Because if we don't, what happens is we find out that in time after a diet, what normally happens is when you fall off, you end up eating more, and you get bigger than you've ever been before. Now, you say, well, Pastor, you preach at Weight Watchers, you're not preaching the Bible. But here's what the Bible talks about. It talks about a man that cleaned everything out, and he, you know, got himself together, so on and so forth, and all that did was it allowed for the enemy to come in even greater than he had come in before. One of the reasons why is it's not good enough to be empty. It should never be empty. And so if all of the demons left your life, I guarantee you that the demons will be back. What has to happen is we must clear out, and then we must be filled with the Holy Spirit so that we might be led, so that we might be guided by Him. Our life depends on the Word of God. Our life depends on the way of God. Our life depends on us knowing the way of God. And so the Bible is important to us. What Jesus says is more important than all of the things that I wish God said. Because in my mind, there's a lot of things I wish God said, but He didn't say it. In this particular passage, in chapter 25, first thing first, He says, you know, your future depends on this. Because the place that I have prepared for you depends on the next few words that He's going to say. Okay? And so, the first choice that you have to make is you have to make the choice that your future is important, and realize that what I'm about to say, your life depends on it, your future depends on it. And that is, so point number one, we've got to act like our life depends on it. But point number two, we've got to embrace the least. So in verses 37 through roughly 45 or so, 45, we'll realize that in that particular passage, he says, and he talks about 5 categories of people. He talks about those who are hungry, those who are thirsty, those who are in prison, those who need to be clothed, and the stranger. He talks about the naked, the prisoner, the sick might. But he talks about the sick, the imprisoned. He talks about the stranger, those who are naked, and he tells us that we need to feed those who are hungry or those who are thirsty. And so we realize that these people, we realize that these people are the least in society. As a matter of fact, he says, because the people who he told that they did the things right, they said, well, when did we do it? And he said, it was when you did it to the least of them. The people that he told them that they did the things wrong, they said, well, when did you do it? And he said, when you did it for the people who were the least of them. And so your not doing is not what's going to separate you. So a lot of times what we do in the church is we pride ourselves in what we don't do. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I'm not promiscuous, I'm whatever. But that's not in this list. That's not what divides you. That's not what divides you. What divides you in this list, and this is, I would love for you to find another list. But Jack, I assure you, this is the only list. This is it. This is the only list. Sister Beck would say amen. Check it out. This is it. This list says that it is not about what we don't do, and yet I can show you in the Bible. Let me just address that now, because I know somebody's going to want to know about that. In terms of the things that preachers have told us and the church tells us that we should not do, that has to do with the quality of your individual life. When we say don't smoke, well, you know what's going to happen if you smoke too much, right? You know what's going to happen if you drink too much, right? And you get drunk, and the Bible says that we shouldn't be drunk because you make those decisions that are not sober. So when we talk about those things that you shouldn't do to live a good lifestyle, that has to do with your personal individual life and your quality of life on earth. And if you do too many of those things, what will happen, Isaiah, is eventually it will be a hindrance to you completing the list that's in Matthew 25.
That's true.
Okay? So if you're going through life drunk, how many people are you going to help? If you're smoking a pack, 2 packs a day, where's your money going? See? So the quality of life is different than the qualification for you to get into heaven. Let me help you. Your quality of life here on earth is different than the qualification for you to get into heaven. So when you get to heaven and you tell, you get to the gate, I don't know who's going to be there, it doesn't necessarily tell us that. But just say we get to a gate, I guess that's some of the ideas. We don't know all that's going to happen on that day. It's not been given to us. But let's just say, for instance, we get there and get to a gate and you either get in or you don't. According to Matthew 25, nobody's going to ask you whether you're a smoker or not. No, you don't like it. This is not what we've been told. But nobody's going to say, Peaches Brooks, did you smoke Cools or menthol? What did you smoke? Because we got to decide whether you get it. Sister Jasmine Moore, did you drink Patron? What were you drinking? That's not what this list says. As a matter of fact, there is no place in the Gospels where Jesus presents anything like that. Let me say this again. There is no place in the Gospels where Jesus presents anything like that. There's no scenario whereby Jesus says that he's going to check us for our smoking and our alcohol and those kind of things. Matthew 25. He tells us that the way that it will be determined whether you get in or not is how you treat the least of those among you. It's just as clear as that. I can't make it up. I'm not trying to add to it. Because I was taught some of the same things that some of the other folk in here who have gray hair was taught, it bothers me. Because it's hard to release what you have been told all your life, even though it's a lie. And yes, I said it is a lie. It's not it's Sister Jasmine Brooks, I can't clean it up. I can't call it a fib. I can't call it a small tale. It was a lie. Boldface. And the sad part about it is, Sister Kenitha, I believe it's a demonic lie. You know the reason I believe it's a demonic lie? Because if we continue to embrace the lie and not know the truth, then we're on the way to hell with clean lungs. God designed this so that we would have clean hearts and dirty hands, and not dirty hearts and clean hands. It is our job to care for those who are the least, to take in the stranger, to feed the hungry, to give refreshing water or whatever to those who are thirsty, to visit the sick, to visit the prison, to clothe the naked. That's our job. And we must make a choice to either continue living for each other so that we look good before each other, or Brother David Hodge, to live for God. And so are we willing to live for God? Are we ready to make a choice to embrace the least? Then number 3. So number 1, we've got to live like our life depends on it. Number 2, we embrace the least. And then number 3, we've got to know that there are consequences. Because in verse 46, for those people who decide today that you don't want to listen, for those people who you don't want to accept my offer to make this choice today, you don't want to make that choice. What he says is that ultimately these people who did not do for the least of them, he looks at them and he says, depart from me. I don't even know. Is that what it says? Somebody read 46 for me, just so we get the brevity.
These shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into the life eternal.
Everlasting punishment. You get it? Now I know that we were told something else. At least I was. I was told this, you're going to hell forever. For all of these things. But in fact, Jesus says that when you don't take care of the least, you're going to be told to depart, and you're going to have punishment. And this is not a 25 to life. This is life. Everlasting life. This is without parole. So church, I've told you the story, so I'm sure you're saying, well, Pastor, what's the solution? The solution is this. Our church has an opportunity to do something great. Each and every season, we do some stuff. We do something to make sure that we're aligned with this mission, this goal, this thing that Jesus told us to do. And so, as you know, for quite some time, we've been feeding families. And I know that there are people who say, well, can't we keep feeding families? We like that. Just as life has some transitions and the Lord leads us in different directions, so does the church. We have transitions, we have places where we're more effective, we have places where we've maybe neglected certain things. And over the 75 years that we've been kind of in existence as a church, we've done a lot of things that we did well. We did some things that we did in excellent ways. This church has always had what was called, years ago, I shouldn't say always because we don't have it now, but years ago we had what was called a Poor Saints Offering. We helped each other in missions and so on and so forth. But if somebody was in need, we tried to help them. During Sunday school, and some of the people who are even younger than I am that grew up in this church, you realize that on Sunday there was breakfast after Sunday school. That began because there was a family that came into the church, and on Sundays they would be hungry. And so the Sunday school superintendent at the time, the former pastor, bought a package of hot dogs and some hamburger buns on the way to church, started cooking those hot dogs after Sunday school so that that family could have food, and it became a Liberty Hill tradition probably all the way up until about in 2000 or so, and then they started serving a full breakfast. But at one time, people thought it was strange. They would come to our church, and on Sunday morning, they'd say, y'all having hot dogs? What, for breakfast? And seriously, it was just, at that time, it was just hot dogs, ketchup, mustard. That's all you got. And so, but that was a meal, and it fed people. So my point is, we've been feeding people for a while. This is something that our church has been doing. We've done that. We've had clothing drives. As a matter of fact, you probably remember that big Salvation Army bin that was here last year, and we've done clothing drives. We've taken strangers in. The parsonage has seen its share of visitors. And I'm sure that a lot of others have been here. Sometimes I tease the staff and say, I'm walking through the hall and I'm trying to figure out, well, who is that? You know. And so we've taken in strangers. We've visited hospitals. We did convalescent center, if you remember, for a year. We did the photo shots and those kind of things. So we've done a lot of things. My brothers and sisters, where Liberty Hill has been weak is we've not done good prison ministry. We've not done good prison ministry. And he said that in that list. He said that we needed to take care of those who are confined, prisoners. Now, this isn't just locked up in the way that we think about it, just being locked up in a state prison. But there are people who are chained up and locked up mentally. There are people who are spiritually locked up in prison. There are people who feel like they're disconnected and so on and so forth. And so he's calling us to do great ministry with regards to those who are prisoners. Whether they be prisoners of their mind, physically, spiritually, emotionally, so on and so forth. He's calling us. Now, here's the thing. Because we haven't done it well, Sister Jeray, we will admit that we have no clue as to what we're doing. We just know that God said, that Christ said, that this is something we should do, that we're supposed to do. So, Brother Ron, we've got to learn how to do it. And so what we will do is we'll start off small, and we will learn from others who are already doing it. And we will increase that ministry as God leads us.
Amen. Amen.
Angel Tree, these graduations are the way we get started. So my brothers and sisters, the question is as simple as this. Will you choose everlasting life with our Savior? Or will you choose everlasting life apart from Him? For Him never to receive you. I think the choice is simple. So we need to do prison ministry like our life depends on it. Our future depends on it. We need to know the consequences. Eventually, prisoners, people who are re-entering society, they'll be coming into our church. Eventually, they'll be right here in our church. And we will be challenged to do what Jesus said. That is to love God with our heart, mind, and soul. And to love our neighbor, as I said. Because it could be any one of us. Only by the grace of God. So my brothers and my sisters, make a choice. To act like your life depends on it. To embrace the least. And to know that there are consequences. We must serve those who are. We're not going to stop doing the other things just because we're focused on this one. So we must remember, and every Sunday when you say that declaration, I know that sometimes it may seem like, oh, this is so boring to have to read this every Sunday. But this is to remind us every single week what Jesus did and what He's calling us to do. Amen, my brothers and sisters. Questions? Any questions?